A quiet morning transforms the morning sun cast golden rays through the transparent dome of Stellar Haven, a modest human colony perched on the edge of explored space. Inside the Cosmic Cup Café, 23-year-old Rosalie Torres wiped down tables with practiced efficiency, her mind wandering to the astronomy courses she studied during late nights. The café sat at the corner of the main plaza, a cozy establishment where colonists gathered for coffee and conversation before heading to their duties at the mining facilities or research labs. Rosalie had arrived on Stellar Haven 2 years ago, seeking a fresh start after losing her family in a transport accident. She had thrown herself into work and education, finding solace in the rhythm of serving customers and the endless wonder of the stars visible through the colony's protective dome. Her only companion was her younger sister, 16-year-old Jade, who had been born unable to hear. Rosalie had learned sign language as a child, and it had become their private language of love and understanding. The cafe owner, a weathered woman named Patricia Huang, emerged from the storage room carrying boxes of supplies. She set them down with a grunt and wiped her forehead. "Big day today, Rosalie. The Draconian diplomatic fleet is scheduled to dock at our port within the hour." Rosalie paused in her cleaning. "The Draconians?" "Here at Stellar Haven," Patricia nodded, her expression a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "Apparently, Emperor Vexarian himself is leading a goodwill tour of outer colonies. Something about strengthening alliances before the new trade negotiations with Earth." "The colony administrator sent everyone briefings last night." Rosalie pulled out her personal tablet and found the message she had ignored in her exhaustion after her double shift. The briefing detailed the Draconian Empire, one of the most powerful civilizations in the known galaxy. The Draconians were massive reptilian beings who stood between 8 and 10 feet tall, covered in scales that shimmered with colors ranging from deep emerald to brilliant ruby. They possessed wings that could span 20 feet, though they rarely flew in enclosed spaces, and their culture valued honor, strength, and eloquence above all else. The briefing included a section on Draconian customs and communication. While most Draconians spoke the standard galactic language fluently, they also possessed an intricate system of hand gestures used in formal ceremonies and diplomatic exchanges. Rosalie found herself fascinated by the images showing the complex movements, noting with surprise how similar some gestures were to human sign language. "Do you think they will actually come here?" Rosalie asked, glancing around the small café with its mismatched furniture and faded decorations. Patricia shrugged with a smile. "Who knows? But we should be prepared just in case. The administrator wants all businesses to put their best foot forward. This visit could mean increased trade opportunities for the colony." As the morning progressed, the café filled with excited colonists, all discussing the unprecedented visit. Rosalie served coffee and breakfast pastries while listening to the speculation and theories about why such a powerful delegation would visit their remote outpost. Through the dome, she could see the docking platforms in the distance, where maintenance crews rushed about making preparations. At precisely 1100 hours, 3 magnificent ships descended from the stars. Even from this distance, their beauty was breathtaking. The vessels were designed to resemble ancient dragons, their hulls crafted from metals that caught the light and reflected it in dazzling patterns. The lead ship was the largest, its surface appearing to be made of living flame frozen in metal form. The entire café rushed to the windows, pressing against the glass to watch the landing. Rosalie stood among them, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and wonder. She had seen aliens before. Since joining the galactic community, humans had encountered dozens of species, but the Draconians were legendary. They were warriors and philosophers, scientists and artists, feared and respected across 1,000 worlds. The news feeds activated on every screen in the café, showing the docking platform where officials in their finest uniforms waited nervously. The main hatch of the lead ship opened, and a figure emerged that could only be Emperor Vexarian himself. He was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. His scales were a deep crimson color that seemed to glow from within, and his wings, though folded against his back, were clearly massive. He wore armor that appeared to be forged from some exotic metal that shifted colors as he moved, and atop his head sat a crown of natural horns adorned with precious stones. His eyes, visible even through the camera feed, were a striking gold that seemed to see everything. Behind the emperor came his entourage, each member impressive in their own right, though none matched his presence. They wore ceremonial armor and carried themselves with the dignity of seasoned diplomats. The colony administrator, a nervous man named Director Hammond, bowed so deeply he nearly folded in half. The emperor acknowledged him with a gracious nod, and the two began speaking, though the audio was too distant to hear clearly. The café buzzed with conversation as customers analyzed every detail of the encounter. Rosalie returned to work, though she found it hard to concentrate. Something about the visit felt significant, though she could not explain why. She had always believed that humanity's place among the stars was still being written, and moments like these felt like turning points in that unfolding story. Hours passed, and the initial excitement began to fade. The Draconian delegation toured the colony's main facilities, visiting the research laboratories, the mining operations, and the agricultural domes. News feeds provided constant updates, but it became clear that the emperor's schedule was packed with official meetings and ceremonies. The chances of any Draconians visiting a small café seemed increasingly remote. Rosalie was taking an order from a group of engineers when the café door opened. She glanced up out of habit, and her pen clattered to the floor. Standing in the doorway was a young Draconian, smaller than the emperor but still towering at nearly 8 feet tall. His scales were a beautiful azure blue with silver patterns that traced across his body like frozen lightning. He wore elegant armor that seemed more ceremonial than practical, with the imperial seal visible on his chest plate. His eyes were a striking violet, unusual for Draconians, and they scanned the café with what appeared to be curiosity. Beside him stood 2 guards in full military armor, their hands resting on weapons that Rosalie hoped they would never need to use. The entire café fell into shocked silence. Patricia rushed forward from behind the counter, her face flushed with a mixture of honor and panic. "Welcome, honored guests. We are deeply privileged by your presence in our humble establishment." The young Draconian nodded graciously but did not speak. One of the guards stepped forward, his voice deep and formal. "Prince Drakon, only son of Emperor Vexarian and heir to the Draconian throne, wishes to experience your establishment. The Emperor believes it important for the prince to understand all aspects of human colonial life, from the grand to the simple." Patricia bowed repeatedly. Of course. Please, take any seat you desire. We are honored beyond measure." The prince moved with surprising grace for someone so large, his tail sweeping behind him as he walked to a corner table that offered a view of both the café and the dome beyond. His guards positioned themselves nearby, their expressions neutral but watchful. The other customers stared openly, some whispering to each other, others recording the moment on their devices until stern looks from the guards made them reconsider. Rosalie took a deep breath, smoothed her apron, and approached the table with a menu tablet. She had rehearsed Draconian greetings in her mind during the morning's excitement, but now that the moment had arrived, her mind felt blank. She bowed as she had seen Director Hammond do on the news feed. "Welcome, Your Highness. It is an honor to serve you. May I offer you refreshment?" The prince looked at her with those unusual violet eyes, and for a moment, Rosalie thought she saw something in his expression. Sadness, perhaps, or loneliness. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. He glanced at his guards, then back at her, and made a small gesture with his hand point. One of the guards cleared his throat. "Prince Drakon does not speak." The words hung in the air, and Rosalie saw discomfort flash across the faces of the nearby customers. Not speak? A member of the royal family, the heir to an empire, unable to communicate in the traditional way? She saw the prince's shoulders tense slightly, saw the way his eyes dropped to the table. In that instant, understanding flooded through Rosalie. She recognized that posture, that expression. It was the same one Jade wore when people discovered she was deaf, the same defensive withdrawal when others made assumptions about her capabilities based on a single difference. Without thinking, Rosalie set down the menu and lifted her hands. She began to sign, her movements slow and clear. "Can you understand me?" The prince's head snapped up, his eyes widening in shock. For a long moment, he simply stared at her, and Rosalie worried she had made a terrible mistake. Then, slowly, tentatively, the prince raised his own hands and signed back. You speak the hand language, Rosalie felt her heart soar. I do. My sister is deaf. We have used sign language since we were children. A transformation came over the prince's face. The guarded expression melted away, replaced by something that looked like hope and relief. His guards stepped forward, their expressions confused. What are you doing, human? One guard demanded. I am communicating with His Highness, Rosalie replied calmly, her hands still moving as she signed to the prince. He speaks through his hands, as do many humans who cannot hear. It is a beautiful and complete language. The prince signed rapidly, his movements becoming more animated. They told me humans did not use hand speech. They said your kind only valued spoken words. Rosalie shook her head, signing her response while speaking aloud so the guards and other customers could understand. That is not true. Many humans use sign language. It is respected and valued among our people. Those who sign are not less than those who speak. They are simply different, and difference is not weakness. The prince's eyes glistened, and Rosalie realized with shock that he was fighting back tears. No one has ever said that to me before. In my culture, the inability to roar, to speak with the voice of thunder, is seen as a flaw in one worthy of the throne. Rosalie felt anger flash through her. That is not a flaw. You communicate perfectly well. Anyone who cannot see that is the one with the limitation, not you. The prince signed something that made Rosalie smile. You are brave to speak so boldly about my people's beliefs. That I speak truth, not boldness, Rosalie signed back. Your worth is not determined by how you communicate, but by the content of your character and the wisdom of your thoughts. A connection forms. The café remained frozen in tableau, every eye fixed on the impossible scene unfolding before them. Prince Drakon, heir to the most powerful empire in the known galaxy, was having an animated conversation with a human waitress using hand gestures that flowed between them like a graceful dance. The guard stood uncertainly, unsure whether to intervene or allow this unprecedented interaction to continue. Patricia approached cautiously, her voice soft. Rosalie, is everything all right? Rosalie glanced at her employer, then back at the prince, whose expression had transformed from guarded loneliness to something approaching joy. Everything is wonderful, Patricia. Prince Drakon and I are simply talking. He uses sign language, just like my sister Jade. The prince's hands moved rapidly. You have a sister who signs? Please, tell me about her. Rosalie pulled out a chair, and after a moment's hesitation and a nod from the prince, she sat down. It felt presumptuous to sit at a table with royalty, but the prince seemed to prefer the informality. She began to sign while speaking aloud, allowing everyone in the café to follow along. My sister Jade is 16 years old. She was born deaf, unable to hear sound. When we were young, my parents taught both of us sign language so we could all communicate. Jade is brilliant. She studies stellar cartography and dreams of mapping unexplored regions of space. She sees the universe differently than those who can hear, and that different perspective makes her exceptionally talented at recognizing patterns others miss. The prince leaned forward, his attention completely focused. She is not considered broken or less worthy because of her deafness. Rosalie shook her head emphatically. Not by anyone worth knowing. There are ignorant people who make assumptions, but they are wrong. Jade is complete exactly as she is. She does not need to be fixed or changed. She simply experiences the world in her own way. The prince's hands trembled slightly as he signed. I have spent my entire life being told I am incomplete. That a prince who cannot roar with the voice of thunder is unworthy of the throne. My father loves me, I know this, but even he sees my silence as a flaw to be hidden. That is why I have so many guards and attendants to speak for me, to ensure no one forgets I am royal despite my inadequacy. Rosalie felt her chest tighten with empathy. There is no inadequacy in you, Your Highness. You communicate with grace and clarity. The failure is not yours, but belongs to those who cannot see beyond their own narrow definitions of worth. One of the guards stepped forward, his voice firm but not unkind. Forgive me, human, but you do not understand our culture. In Draconian society, the voice is everything. Our poetry, our songs, our battle cries, all are expressed through the roar. A prince who cannot roar cannot lead armies, cannot inspire troops, cannot perform the sacred rites that bind our people together. Rosalie stood and faced the guard, her expression respectful but unyielding. Then perhaps your culture needs to expand its understanding of leadership. The greatest leaders I have read about in human history were not always the loudest voices. Some led through wisdom, others through compassion, still others through the power of their ideas. Strength comes in many forms. The guard looked uncertain, clearly unaccustomed to having his cultural beliefs challenged by a human waitress. Before he could respond, the prince stood and signed with sharp, decisive movements. She is right, Korath. You know she is right, even if you cannot admit it. I have spent years studying leadership, strategy, diplomacy, and philosophy. I have learned 6 languages beyond our own. I have trained in combat and meditation. But none of that matters to our people because I cannot make the sound they expect. Korath, the guard, bowed his head. My prince, I have never doubted your capabilities. I have served you since you were a youngling, and I know your worth. But the empire, the court, the generals, they will not accept a silent emperor. You know this as well as I. The prince's shoulders slumped slightly, and Rosalie could see the weight of expectation pressing down on him. She touched his arm gently, and he looked at her with surprise. Physical contact with royalty was likely forbidden in his culture, but she could not help herself. May I suggest something, Your Highness? She signed. You say your people value the roar, the voice of thunder. But thunder is just noise. It is lightning that carries the true power. Perhaps it is time your people learned to see the lightning they have been ignoring while they focused on the thunder. The prince stared at her, and slowly, a smile spread across his face. It was the first genuine smile she had seen from him, and it transformed his entire appearance. His violet eyes sparkled with something that looked like hope. You speak like a philosopher, Rosalie Torres. How does a waitress in a distant colony come to such wisdom? Rosalie laughed softly. I am not wise, Your Highness. I am simply someone who loves her sister and refuses to let anyone diminish her because she is different. That love has taught me to see beyond surface expectations to the true value within people. The prince was about to respond when the café door burst open again. A draconian official in elaborate robes rushed in, followed by more guards. Director Hammond trailed behind, looking frazzled and anxious. Prince Drakon, the official began, his voice carrying clear disapproval. You were scheduled to tour the agricultural facilities 10 minutes ago. The Emperor is asking for you. He stopped mid-sentence as he noticed the prince sitting casually at a table with a human. His eyes narrowed. What is happening here? Korath stepped forward quickly. Prince Drakon was experiencing local cuisine, Chancellor Theron. This establishment came highly recommended. Chancellor Theron's gaze swept over the scene, taking in the empty table with no food, the human waitress standing close to the prince, and the relaxed posture of someone clearly engaged in conversation rather than a formal tasting. His expression grew cold. The prince does not eat in public, he said sharply. It is unseemly for one of his station. Come, Your Highness. Your father waits. Prince Drakon's expression shuddered, the brief joy vanishing behind the mask of royal composure. He stood slowly and began to walk toward the door. But before leaving, he turned back and signed quickly to Rosalie, his movement small enough that only she could see clearly. Thank you for seeing me. Truly seeing me. I will not forget this. Rosalie signed back, her heart aching. You deserve to be seen, Your Highness. Never forget your own worth. The prince's eyes glistened again, and then he was gone, swept out of the café by his entourage. The door closed, and the sudden absence felt like a physical void. The café erupted in excited chatter, everyone talking at once about what they had witnessed. Patricia put a hand on Rosalie's shoulder. That was remarkable. I have never seen anything like it. You spoke with the prince as if he were an old friend. Rosalie sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. He is just a person, Patricia. A lonely person trapped by expectations he never asked for. She looked down at her hands, the same hands that had bridged the gap between two worlds, two cultures, two lonely souls. I hope I helped him, even just a little. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Customers asked Rosalie endless questions about the prince, about what they had discussed, about Draconian sign language. She answered as best she could while her mind remained focused on those violet eyes filled with loneliness and the brief spark of hope she had seen in them. That evening, as Rosalie walked home through the colony's enclosed streets, she could not shake the feeling that something important had happened. She had connected with someone across a vast cultural divide, had seen past the armor and titles to the person underneath. Prince Drakon was not broken or inadequate. He was simply different, and that difference was being treated as a flaw by a culture too rigid to see the value it possessed. When she arrived at her small apartment, Jade was waiting with dinner prepared. Her sister sighed excitedly. "Everyone at school is talking about you. They say you spoke with the Dragon Prince and that he answered you." "Is it true?" Rosalie signed back, smiling at her sister's enthusiasm. "It is true. He uses sign language, just like you. He is remarkably intelligent and kind, but his people do not value his way of communicating. They see it as a weakness." Jade's expression grew serious. "That is how some people see me. Like I am less because I cannot hear their words." Rosalie pulled her sister into a tight embrace. "You are not less. You are complete and perfect exactly as you are. And so is Prince Drakon. I hope I helped him understand that today." As they ate dinner together, signing back and forth about their days, Rosalie felt a deep sense of connection to the distant prince. They had spent less than an hour together, but in that time, she had seen his true self. She wondered if they would ever meet again, and whether her words had made any difference in the lonely life of someone born to rule an empire that could not see his worth. Late that night, as Rosalie prepared for bed, her personal tablet chimed with an incoming message. She picked it up, expecting a work schedule from Patricia. Instead, she found an official communication with the imperial seal of the Draconian Empire. Her hands shook as she opened it. The message was brief but formal. "Miss Rosalie Torres, you are cordially invited to attend a private dinner with Emperor Vexarian and Prince Drakon tomorrow evening at the imperial ship. Transportation will be provided. Your presence is requested and greatly anticipated." The message was signed by Chancellor Theron himself. Rosalie sat on her bed, staring at the message in disbelief. Why would the Emperor want to meet her? Was this about her conversation with the prince? Had she somehow offended them? Or was this something else entirely? She showed the message to Jade, whose eyes widened. "You have to go. You have to tell me everything afterward." Rosalie nodded slowly, her mind racing with possibilities. Tomorrow she would dine with the most powerful family in the known galaxy. Tomorrow she might have a chance to advocate for the prince, to help his father see the incredible son he had. Tomorrow she might help change the course of an empire. Or tomorrow she might make everything worse. Dinner with dragons. The transport shuttle that arrived for Rosalie the following evening was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was small but luxurious, with seating designed for both humans and larger species. The pilot, a young Draconian with emerald scales, nodded respectfully as she boarded but did not speak during the short flight to the imperial ship. Rosalie had spent hours preparing, borrowing a formal dress from Patricia and reviewing everything she knew about Draconian etiquette. Jade had helped her practice responses to potential questions, and together they had rehearsed until Rosalie felt reasonably confident she would not accidentally insult the Emperor and start an interstellar incident. The Imperial ship was even more magnificent up close. The hull seemed to shimmer with an inner light, and the design was so elegant it appeared more like a work of art than a functional vessel. Inside, the corridors were wide and tall, clearly built for beings much larger than humans. Guards stood at attention every 50 feet, their armor gleaming and their weapons ceremonial but undoubtedly functional. A Draconian attendant, smaller than the warriors but still imposing, greeted her at the entrance. "Miss Torres, I am Solara, assistant to Chancellor Theron. I will escort you to the dining hall. Please follow me and do not deviate from the path. Rosalie followed, her heart hammering in her chest. The ship's interior was breathtaking, with walls decorated in intricate patterns that seemed to tell stories. She recognized some elements from her brief research about Draconian history and mythology, but much remained mysterious. They passed through several security checkpoints where guards scanned her thoroughly before allowing her to proceed. Finally, they arrived at a large door adorned with the imperial seal. Solara paused and turned to face her. Before you enter, Miss Torres, you must understand something. Emperor Vexarian is testing you. He wishes to determine if you are worthy of the attention his son has shown you. Do not attempt to deceive him. He can detect lies with remarkable accuracy. Speak honestly, show respect, but do not grovel. The Emperor values strength of character above all else. Rosalie swallowed hard and nodded. Thank you for the warning. The doors opened, revealing a dining hall that took her breath away. It was circular, with a domed ceiling that displayed a perfect view of the stars beyond. In the center sat a table carved from a single piece of what appeared to be crystallized starlight. At the head of the table sat Emperor Vexarian himself, even more imposing in person than he had appeared on the news feeds. To his right sat Prince Drakon, dressed in formal robes of deep blue that matched his scales. His violet eyes met hers across the room, and she saw a flicker of something that might have been apology or perhaps warning. Chancellor Theron stood behind the Emperor, his expression neutral but his eyes watchful. Miss Rosalie Torres, Solara announced formally before bowing and departing. Emperor Vexarian gestured to a seat across from the prince. Please, join us, Miss Torres. We have much to discuss. Rosalie walked forward on legs that felt unsteady, bowed as she had practiced, and took the indicated seat. The chair had been adjusted for her smaller human size, a thoughtful touch that surprised her. Before her was set a place setting with utensils she did not recognize, though she suspected she would not actually be eating much during this meal. You honor me with this invitation, Your Majesty, Rosalie began, keeping her voice steady. I am grateful for the opportunity to dine with you and Prince Drakon. The Emperor studied her with eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. His scales caught the starlight from above, creating an effect that was both beautiful and intimidating. My son tells me you communicated with him yesterday in a manner no one else in our empire has managed. He tells me you used hand gestures similar to those we employ in our formal ceremonies, but with different meanings and greater complexity. Rosalie nodded. Yes, Your Majesty. I use sign language to communicate with my deaf sister. When I realized Prince Drakon also communicated through hand gestures, I attempted to sign with him. To my joy, he understood and responded. The Emperor leaned forward slightly. You realize, of course, that my son's inability to speak is considered a great shame in our culture. The voice is sacred to our people. It is how we sing our history, roar our battle cries, and recite the ancient poetry that binds our civilization together. A prince who cannot do these things is seen as incomplete. Rosalie met his gaze directly, remembering Solara's advice about honesty. With respect, Your Majesty, I believe your culture is wrong about this. Prince Drakon is not incomplete. He is different, and that difference could be a strength if your people were willing to see it as such. Chancellor Theron made a sharp sound of disapproval. You dare to criticize our culture? A human from a minor colony presumes to judge the traditions of an empire that has endured for 10,000 years? Rosalie felt her face flush but held her ground. I do not criticize lightly, Chancellor. But I have seen the pain in Prince Drakon's eyes. I have watched my own sister face similar judgments from ignorant people who equate difference with inadequacy. I speak not to condemn your culture, but to advocate for someone who deserves better than to be seen as lesser because he communicates in a different way. Emperor Vexarian raised a hand, silencing the Chancellor. He continued to study Rosalie with an intensity that made her want to look away, but she forced herself to maintain eye contact. Tell me, Miss Torres, what do you know of leadership? What qualifies you to judge whether my son is fit to inherit an empire? Rosalie took a deep breath. I am not qualified to judge that, Your Majesty. I am a waitress with an incomplete education and limited life experience. But I am qualified to recognize genuine quality in a person when I see it. In my brief conversation with Prince Drakon, I saw intelligence, kindness, curiosity, and a hunger to be understood. I saw someone who has studied hard to master skills he was told he could never use. I saw a leader waiting to be recognized. The emperor sat back in his chair, his expression unreadable. And you believe his silence does not disqualify him from leadership? Rosalie shook her head. Some of the greatest leaders in human history were not defined by their voices but by their vision. We have had deaf presidents, blind scientists, disabled warriors who changed the course of our civilization. Their differences did not limit them. In many cases, those differences provided unique perspectives that made them better leaders, not worse. Prince Drakon's hands moved suddenly, signing with passionate intensity. Rosalie watched his gestures and found herself smiling at his fierce defense of his own worth. She translated aloud for those who could not understand that he says that he has spent his life preparing to lead. He has mastered strategy, diplomacy, economics, and military theory. He speaks 6 languages fluently through sign. He has studied the histories of 100 civilizations to understand how different cultures approach governance. He is ready to lead, but he will never be given the chance because his people cannot see past their own prejudices. The emperor's expression finally shifted, showing something that might have been pain. My son, he said quietly, I have never doubted your capabilities. But you must understand the position you would inherit. An emperor who cannot roar the battle cries will not inspire our warriors. An emperor who cannot recite the sacred poems will not be accepted by our priests. An emperor who cannot sing the morning songs will not be able to lead our people through grief. These are not mere traditions. They are the foundations of our civilization. Rosalie felt the prince's anguish like a physical blow. She looked at him, saw the tears threatening to spill from those violet eyes, and felt her own anger rise. With Your Majesty's permission, she said carefully, I would like to share something my sister once told me. The emperor nodded. When Jade was younger, people would tell her she could not pursue stellar cartography because she was deaf. They said she needed to hear the instruments, hear the communications, hear the warning signals. They said deafness would make her dangerous in space. But Jade refused to accept their limitations. She found new ways to interpret data, developed visual systems for information that others received through sound, and created innovations that have actually improved safety for everyone, deaf and hearing alike. Her difference made her better at her job, not worse. She paused, gathering her courage. Perhaps Prince Drakon's silence could do the same for your empire. Perhaps a leader who must listen more than he speaks would hear things others miss. Perhaps a leader who must be thoughtful in his communication rather than quick to roar would make wiser decisions. Perhaps a leader who has faced rejection and continued anyway would have more empathy for the struggles of his people. Chancellor Theron stepped forward. Your Majesty, this is absurd. We cannot overturn millennia of tradition because a human girl tells us we should. The courtiers will never accept it. The military will not follow him. The priests will declare him unfit. We would risk civil war. Emperor Vexarion stood, his massive form rising to its full imposing height. Everyone else at the table stood as well out of respect. The emperor walked to where his son sat and placed a huge clawed hand gently on his shoulder. Drakon, he signed, his movements unpracticed but sincere. I have failed you. I thought I was protecting you by accepting the court's judgment, by trying to prepare you for a life in the shadows rather than helping you claim your birthright. I told myself I was being realistic, but the truth is I was being a coward. Miss Torres is right. You are ready to lead. You have always been ready. I was simply too afraid to fight for you. Prince Drakon stood and embraced his father, and Rosalie found tears streaming down her own face at the sight of the mighty emperor holding his son. When they separated, both had glistening eyes. The emperor turned to face Rosalie. "Miss Torres, you have done something remarkable today. You have shown me my own blindness and given me the courage to see my son as he truly is. For that, I am in your debt." Rosalie bowed deeply. "I require no debt, Your Majesty. I only hope to help Prince Drakon be seen as he deserves." The emperor smiled, a terrifying and wonderful sight. "Nevertheless, you shall have a reward. What do you desire? Wealth? Position? Name it, and if it is within my power, it shall be yours." Rosalie thought for a long moment. Finally, she met the emperor's gaze. "If it pleases Your Majesty, I would ask for nothing for myself. But I would request that you establish cultural exchange programs between our peoples. Send Draconian scholars to learn human sign language. Send human teachers to your empire to help develop accommodations for Draconians who communicate differently. Let our species learn from each other's approaches to diversity and inclusion." The emperor laughed, a sound like rolling thunder that shook the room. "You ask for nothing for yourself, but you ask me to transform my empire's culture. You are either very clever or very naive, Miss Torres. Perhaps both." He turned to Chancellor Theron. "Make it so. Establish the programs she requests. And send word to the court that I am extending my tour indefinitely. It seems I have much to learn about leadership from our human friends." As the evening progressed, the dinner became less formal. Emperor Vexarian asked Rosalie countless questions about human approaches to disability and difference. He listened intently as she explained various accommodations and technologies, occasionally signing to his son to include him fully in the conversation. Prince Drakon, freed from the weight of shame he had carried his entire life, became animated and joyful. He signed stories about his childhood, his studies, and his dreams for the future. He spoke about reforms he wanted to implement, diplomatic initiatives he had designed, and innovations he had conceived during years of feeling useless. When the evening finally ended, Emperor Vexarian stood and addressed Rosalie formally. "Miss Rosalie Torres of Stellar Haven, you have this night changed the course of the Draconian Empire. You shall forever be remembered as a friend to our people and a bridge between our civilizations. I hope this is merely the beginning of a long friendship between our families." Rosalie bowed one final time. "The honor is mine, Your Majesty. Thank you for listening with an open heart." As she was escorted back to the shuttle, Prince Drakon accompanied her. At the doorway, he took her hands and signed with deep sincerity. "You saved me, Rosalie. You saw me when no one else could. You gave me back my future. I will never forget what you have done." Rosalie signed back, smiling through her tears. "You saved yourself, Your Highness. You remained strong and true despite everything. I simply helped others see what was always there. You are going to be a magnificent emperor." The prince smiled, that same transformative smile from the café. "Perhaps you will visit our empire someday. I would be honored to show you our homeworld and introduce you to our people. We have much to learn from you." "I would like that very much," Rosalie signed. As the shuttle carried her back to Stellar Haven, Rosalie looked out at the stars and thought about the unexpected paths life could take. She had gone to work yesterday as a simple waitress, and now she had helped reshape the future of an empire. Her mother had always told her that kindness and understanding could change the world. Today, she had proven that truth across the vastness of space. When she arrived home, Jade was waiting up despite the late hour. Her sister signed frantically. "Tell me everything. Every single detail." Rosalie laughed and began to sign the story of her extraordinary evening, the dinner with dragons that had started with fear and ended with friendship. As she described the emperor's transformation, the prince's joy, and the promise of cultural exchange programs, she saw pride shining in her sister's eyes. "You did this because of me," Jade signed. Because you love me and refuse to let anyone diminish me. Rosalie hugged her sister tightly. I did this because love opens eyes, and because difference is not weakness. You taught me that, Jade. You have always been my inspiration. As they prepared fours.